Okay, thank you so much, Dan. Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we want to introduce another micro panel discussion. So another very short conversation, and this is going to be on the topic of how to actually build a mobility ecosystem. So there are a number of initiatives around the country, around the world, to actually convene players from as many of like what we're seeing in this room today, people from public transportation, technology companies, auto OEMs, and so forth, and to sort of leverage the local and regional talent base, because we know that, again, what did we talk about this morning? Transportation is inherently a systems challenge. And so you need this kind of dynamic interaction among a variety of different folks. At the MIT Mobility Initiative, we have been collaborating with what I think is really just an exceptional example of a concept in terms of building a mobility ecosystem, and that is Michigan Central. So Michigan Central is, well, I'm not going to talk about it. We actually have Carolina with us, and I believe we have her online. So Carolina is the Chief Operating Officer and Head of Innovation Services at Michigan Central. And we've had the pleasure of working with her and her team. We have participated in some events at their organization. And actually, more importantly, Daniel, who you just heard from, Alexander, who you heard from this morning, they are doing a really interesting project on the ground at Michigan Central on electric vehicle charging optimization. And Hamza Balakrishnan, another one of our faculty at MIT, is doing a second project over at Michigan Central on the drone delivery and using sort of the infrastructure that they have there as a kind of test case. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Carolina, who is joining us from Detroit. And Carolina, first of all, can you hear me? It looks like you can. Yep, and we can hear you. Okay, that's even better. Okay, so over to you, Carolina. If you could tell us a little bit about sort of what Michigan Central is.
I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Michigan Central and really have been on this project for about 5 years. Really, Michigan Central was centered around an iconic building in Detroit. And if you're from Detroit, perhaps you know, and those that aren't, there is an old train station that sat vacant for about 30 years. And in 2018, Bill Ford had the vision to purchase this train station. And his thoughts were, if you could take this view of this decaying train station and really revive it, it could kick off the revival of Michigan. And so, you know, he had that vision and gave that to us, and we've been working on that ever since. The building, as I said, sat vacant for 30 years. It had been, if you see coffee table books from Detroit, it's the sign of decay and the downfall of Detroit on every single book. And so we're trying to turn that around. And really the area around it was as well. The park in front of the train station was bifurcated with roads. There were decaying buildings around it. And for the last 5 years, our mission has been to really take this train station, revive it, the buildings around it, and build an innovation ecosystem. And we are no experts in this space. We try to learn from everyone else out there as well. But we're really trying to, we really have made progress over the past year as we've started opening it. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Michigan Central, we think about ourselves as a social enterprise, really because we integrate community and economic development into our business objectives. And we actually focus both on new solutions, new mobility solutions, and about the workforce, really the talent and the workforce of the future. And we describe our work at the intersection of mobility and society. And that's because we focus on real solutions against solving real challenges in the real world. And it really kind of makes us unique. One of the differentiators for us is we're actually doing this in a really dense urban area. The oldest neighborhood in Detroit is around us. We have historic and very rich heritage communities around us. And we are building this innovation ecosystem with their voices intertwined, so that we ensure that we're not doing tech for tech's sake, but really tech that's actually solving community problems. Our goals are ambitious. I'll go quickly here. We're really trying to drive growth and high value jobs in Michigan. We're trying to become this talent magnet, and we're seeing that happen around the cluster of mobility. We're an open platform, so although Ford has invested $1 billion to catalyze this ecosystem, it's open for everyone. We're striving to get to make Detroit and Michigan a hub of mobility innovation. And our unique model is that we are convening large companies, small startups, philanthropics, universities, communities, and others in one place to work together, pre-IP, obviously, to work through some of these challenges. We started our ecosystem with the startup, focus on the startup in the early stage companies. We've partnered with a company called New Lab, who've expanded their business out of Brooklyn to actually to get the momentum starting. We have created a building that we actually think enhances that collaboration. So this was the original book depository post office that serviced the train station, and we've redesigned it and revived it to enable collaboration. We've connected the floors, we've created those open spaces. We have these areas where communities can gather, and really this is what opened in April. And since April, we've been on a fast track to really to get things moving. We've attracted 63 startups. We have 24 what we call networked companies, which is really thinking about, we have about 12 VCs, but it's what are those resources that a startup needs to enable it. So the state has offices in there, the city of Detroit does, the Michigan Economic Development Corp, as well as the venture capitalists. We cross different areas of the market, all the way from different technologies, different types of mobility. And really what we've seen is, although we've tracked it, about 60% of our population is Detroit based, 40% is both national and international. And so we're really trying to have that balance in this ecosystem. We focus on 3 areas. We found that mobility is such a large word that we needed to, in a large scope, that we needed to really put some anchors down. And so our area is really around low altitude airspace. We're focused on the transition to electrification as well as grid resilience, but through a lens of equity. And then really focused on, the supply chain has been hit significantly over the years, and really through COVID. And so we're looking at alternate waves of moving goods, so multimodal logistics, the handoffs associated with those, and how do we then bring in a number of new technologies to actually alleviate some of those issues with the supply chain. We have assets, a number of assets. So when we think about attracting those startups, we have to give them, especially post-COVID, a reason to come here. And so we think we're creating what we're calling an innovation platform by leveraging some of the physical assets that we have and introducing others. So we have the first dynamic road that's being installed in the US. It is partnered with Electrion. We'll have a mile of dynamic charging roads that will be part of our, I'll call it our innovation canvas. We are having use cases, companies, both large and small, coming to innovate on here and really understanding if this is some sort of technology of the future that can help with, keeping your vehicle fleets on the road for longer. We have about 15,000 square feet of on-site shop space, all the way from, so somebody can take in the hard tech space, can take an idea and take it all the way through to production in the shops that we have within New Lab. We have the first advanced aerial innovation region. So we've just announced a 3-mile radius around Michigan Central, where we'll be testing initially low altitude drones and looking at new ways of delivering goods and services. The partnership that we have is with innovation companies, but also with MDOT, as we think about the Michigan Department of Transportation and look at what are the policies that we need to have in place if this is going to become an industry by 2030 that seems to be talking about a $30 billion industry. What are the policies we need to have in place? How do we get in front of those? How do we de-risk these technologies? And so this airspace that's been designated will be doing that over the next 2 to 3 years.
Super.
The Port of Monroe. So when I think about multimodal logistics, the Port of Monroe is another asset. When we launched this partnership, it's about 30 miles from Michigan Central. They're the first container port. We had 48 startups that called us that wanted to actually come participate because of this asset. And then rounding out air, sea, we have land. We have a transportation innovation zone, which is really a designated space in the real world streets that allows us to get to fast track permitting and testing these solutions in the real world environment. We started convening several types of communities. TED Climate has been there. We're finding ourselves to be a bit of a town square. We also have been looking at where there are gaps in the ecosystem, and what started out as 5 people in a room looking for some help has now become a thing every 3 Saturdays a month that we call Black Tech Saturdays, where we have about 200 Black and Brown founders that gather to really talk about how do we actually help elevate Black and Brown founders and get them the resources that they need so that they can compete at a level in this ecosystem and get there faster. I know I've talked a lot, and so I'll pause there.
That's great. That's super, Carolina. It's a very, very compelling picture. And I guess I would just emphasize kind of 3 points. Number 1, the community element that you just talked about. Number 2, this concept of an innovation platform. And then, number 3, congratulations, because several of us from MIT were there in April when you inaugurated the book building with New Lab. And, to have attracted 63 startups in such a short period of time, that's just fantastic. Now, let's just transition a little bit over here. I'd like to introduce to my left, Jamey Tesler. Now, those of you who were with us last year may remember Jamey was actually on the closing panel at the time with Josh, who's the CEO of Michigan Central. So Jamey's a lawyer by training. He's served in private practice at Greenberg Traurig. He was deputy counsel here at the MBTA, the local transit agency here in Boston. He's a registrar of motor vehicles and served as the Secretary of Transportation for Massachusetts. And Jamey, we're here today. I'm going to come sit next to you. So let me just grab. Okay. So we are here today, and we're with this great crowd. And so we're also thinking about, how can we build on this? What could we potentially do here in Massachusetts and New England more broadly?
So thanks, John, and thanks for the chance to be here. And this works perfectly going after Carolina. So a couple quick points, mindful of time. One, I had the chance to go, actually was in Detroit 2 weeks ago and got a tour of the New Lab building. And I just want to underscore what a wonderful place it is. It's a really, truly amazing site. 2, the specifics of what Carolina just went through and some of the value for the community and for the region. We're seeing this model in a number of places in North America. We also here in Massachusetts have successfully launched innovation hubs similar to Michigan Central in other sectors. So Greentown Labs nearby in the clean tech area. We have a robotics hub here in the Seaport, which is thriving, and we have done this in a number of other sectors. So if you take the example of other places in doing this, you take the general that these can make, hubs can make a meaningful impact in their community, and the model that we have successfully here in New England, John and I, Justin Holmes, who's here from Zipcar in the audience, Akash, I don't know if he left. We had at one point a quorum of the board of this new organization that John and I are working, and others are working to form, called the Mass Mobility Hub. And this organization is going to somewhat similar to Michigan Central, but here in Massachusetts, support our mobility ecosystem. And a few just quick points, again, mindful of time. We are literally in the beginning stages of incorporating, getting a board together. We will be launching this in the coming weeks. And we have, as I said, a great board. Tim Rowe, whom some of you may know, who is the founder and chief executive of the CIC and has replicated this model in a number of other areas for innovation, is going to be our board chair. So we're really excited about this. We're learning from Michigan Central and some other places of what they've done successfully. And our belief is that we can help what is already a strong ecosystem here in Massachusetts, that we can continue to fit into the rubric of these other innovation hubs that we have successfully launched as public-private partnerships here in the region. And lastly, continue to build that next generation of companies here in Massachusetts and make a real impact in both our community and more globally and more nationally on all the issues that we've been talking about today. And what we really need to do is to support many of you who are taking those risks, give them resources, give them support, and find ways that we can get over the hurdles and help them scale in the mobility sector, because we know that's challenging. So I did that quick.
That was great. Perfect summary. And, I think when I think about this, obviously Michigan has tremendous assets, being the sort of base of the automotive industry here in the United States and so forth, things that they can do well that we can't. We have some things here in Massachusetts that are really impressive assets, and I think most specifically around robotics and around artificial intelligence, machine learning, some of those areas. And our concept here is not one of competition, it's absolutely one of collaboration, to really tie these different innovation centers. I've personally worked with one in Texas as well, the Mobility Innovation Zone at Hillwood. There are all of these centers are doing really interesting things, and we need to, as to Christina's point earlier, we need to develop that innovation capacity and do everything that we can. That's in line with what we do at the Mobility Initiative: research, education, entrepreneurship, and engagement. And so this is really talking about entrepreneurship and engagement.
And to that exact point, one of the opportunities that's come up through the day and have talked to a number of people about is when you have more than one site, we can actually have learning and testing and piloting at more than one site, which, as many of you know, can have a catalytic effect. And we really do need multiple sites. We need multiple places to get this. And you made the point earlier about Metcalfe's law and how do we really build that network. One thing that I think we're going to really want to test and really want to try is, if we have wonderful places like Michigan Central with its strengths and its assets, we build the mass mobility hub here, and there are other places across the country and region. How do we together build that network? And how do we strengthen our mobility sector so we have so 2 + 2 = 5, and we can really grow together and collaborate together in that way.
Perfect. Carolina, any just last reflections, comments from your side?
I think, Jamey, you're spot on. I think we look at it that way as well, right? Not one of us can do this alone. And companies need to be able to get to scale faster. They need to get to commercialization. And by connecting these different nodes, they offer different types of opportunities that will allow that to happen, right? Because you can't test one place and expect to deploy everywhere. There's going to be different nuances. And so I think that's exactly what we're hoping for as well, is deep collaboration across these nodes. We've just tried to get up and running. It is super hard, as you know, and I think now are those opportunities.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to shift from being a panelist back to being the MC and throw ourselves off of this stage. Thank you so much, Carolina. Thank you, Jamey. Thank you.